the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Walton, joined by Sergeant Walton. Clint, how are you?
I'm excellent.
The first thing you did this morning was saying Old MacDonald to me. Because we were talking about how crazy it is that there's so many animals and animal noises around us. There was roosters on one end and pigs on the other, sheep and lambs,
goats, owls,
rats, coyotes. I think that it's really cool living in an environment like this. And you forgot to turn the porch light on, so it was like super dark today. And it was really still, and it was just like, it's nice to have those kind of calm, peaceful moments to be able to notice all of that type of stuff.
Yeah, especially not hearing road traffic, no trains. Like it's really nice to have those peaceful moments to where all you hear is the nature around you. And living in a rural area, it's super cool to just be able to wake up and hear that.
Yeah. Today, I want to talk about how a lot of first responders feel that their value is tied to their achievement, their productivity, or even their rank. And when the mindset shows up at home, a lot of the times this is going to be able to quietly damage your relationships. And I think it's important to dig into how this pattern develops, why it backfires, and how you can shift from performance mode into presence mode, especially when you're around the people that you care about.
Yeah, as soon as you said that, it made me think of a story you had told me when I forget where we were, and you were with other police wives, and you almost saw each of the individual wives almost standing up talking about the rank of their husband and where the position that they hold within the department, and it almost created a hierarchy within those different wives. Oh, my husband's a lieutenant, my husband's a captain, my husband's a sergeant, and going off there to where they're touting that achievement as if it was their own. But I think as individuals, like we hold that rank, we hold that authority and use it as this is this badge of honor, or this is who I am, instead of this is what I've achieved.
Yeah, once upon a time, I thought that I could intermingle with other police wives until I very quickly realized that these are not my people. And there's a lot of cattiness, and we talk about that a lot, how identifying as what your husband does for your profession says a great deal about the fact that there's a lot of things that you probably need to focus on for yourself. One being like, get your own thing, do your own thing, find your own identity. Some of them sometimes need to get a job even. And I don't mean that in a catty way. I mean that if you're putting your entire credibility on that of what your husband does for work, then there's some self-work that should be done for yourself. And, Clint, why do you think that law enforcement and just first responder work often rewards performance over vulnerability?
I think it's based off of you have people stepping in and getting these positions, not always being the most qualified, and sometimes they are. It just depends on the department. It depends on the point in time during those promotional processes, depending on whether you're buddies with a certain person compared to actually you working and achieving that status to say, look, I actually worked towards this where this person didn't.
Yeah. And I think that becomes such a big deal when you are at the department. And many times this can unconsciously be carried into the home life. And I think there are some signs that you're performing instead of connecting when you're at home. And one of them could be that you're trying to constantly fix things instead of just stopping and listening. Sometimes you might even overschedule yourself to be able to prove anything to anybody. And I think too, a lot of people will measure their value in what they do and not who they are. And that's the big distinguishment between you at work and you at home. And it's important to understand how to separate that.
Yeah, I think especially with being at work is like, and I'm definitely guilty of this, is you start investing so much into your career and so much into what you're doing that it transverses into you when you come home. Like you're either thinking about work all the time, or you're creating that how you would handle an incident at work, you're trying to handle it at home, and you're trying to control every dynamic in every situation instead of finding that balance of turning it on and turning it off in those instances.
Yeah, and going back to that example of those females, it was actually like 20 of us, and this was my first time and only time going to an event like this. It was like a brunch, and I remember sitting there. I was literally in the center of the table, and because I was the outcast, I was like the only one who hadn't been in their little clique, and it was very interesting to me that when we were all asked to stand up and then introduce ourselves, that like that was the go-to, and like person 1, 2, and 3 and did it. So then person 1 through 20 decided to do it as well, and it was something to really pay attention to, because that was my first introduction into the unhealthy attachments that spouses have, in particular when it comes to what their husbands do for work as it relates to law enforcement. And I think that sometimes loved ones might feel unseen or even secondary to your achievements, and this is a prime example of that. And when that happens, I think that number one, the first responder needs to be able to understand that this is happening, and then give some encouragement to their spouse to be able to maybe push them to do something on their own, or even have a hard conversation of like, my career is not your achievement, and that is harsh to do, but it's the truth, and we can celebrate with you. Like, I celebrate with you. I am so proud of all of your achievements. I have never once accepted any of your achievements as my own, nor have I ever identified as that.
Yeah, and I think you need to find that if as an individual, if you find that for yourselves and you're able to create that dynamic in a relationship, you should be building each other up. It's not, I didn't achieve this for what you've done. I didn't do that. It's building each other up and focusing on those achievements and focusing on one another to be able to build each other up together, instead of like, oh, look what my husband or look what my wife did, and this is who I identify as.
I know a couple, and the female always brags about her husband being a police officer, and that is her identification. This is my husband, and he's a cop. And it got to the point to where we had a conversation, and he and I were talking about how law enforcement might not be something that he wants to do, but one of the deterrents to that is his wife's pride in what he does for work. And I think a lot of the times that when you have this achievement-driven interaction with your spouse, it's not creating any kind of bond or intimacy between the two of you. And in the example I just gave, this can actually be really harmful.
Yeah, if you don't, because then you get stuck in a dynamic that you don't want to be in. And if you're not having those hard conversations, if you're not clear on look, this is not me. And I think it kind of comes back to is I don't identify as a cop, and that's who I am as a person. Like I am my own individual. That is just my career. That is my job. But I'm not so focused on living behind the blue line and doing that to where you have that separation to it.
I think a lot of that, like, because we've tried to break this down a lot, right? Because you are quite unique. And I can say that after just experiencing conversations with the dynamics of many other first responders. And so a lot of the things that we have that kind of deter you from that is, number one, you and I talk a lot. We debrief a lot. We also make sure that we have other elements of our life that exist. And one would think that having a spouse and kids, like that would be the other element of it. But a lot of the times that can act as a deterrent when you have something going on up here. And for us, because we don't have kids, we make sure that we have all kinds of other things. So our home is our sanctuary. And, one day, if you're listening to this and you're our friend, I hope you have an opportunity to come and visit our house. It's literally like a castle. I never would have imagined that we would live in a dream house in the way that we do on this land. And it's something that we take a lot of pride in. And because of that, our other thing, like outside of work, is inside of our home. And that could be, you spent the entire day cleaning while I worked yesterday. That could be something like home repairs. That could be something like you also went through like the dishes and started sorting them out so you can give some of them to your mom, ones that we hadn't seen since we were married in 2008. And there are so many things like that like this, having a sanctuary like this, it helps. This is our union, right? This is our castle. And so because of that, when we're able to contribute things that make our house a home and that allow us to enjoy the pride that we have in what we have built and what we continue to build together, that has nothing to do with what we do for work.
Yeah, it's creating that separation and not, and as you were speaking on it, I was thinking about, it's like, there's so many, like, I spend so much time at work with just working, and, I have friends at work and they're buddies and we talk and like we're there together. But when I come home, like, they're not my buddies I still talk to. Like, I don't carry on those conversations. Do I have people, of course, that I still talk with and just check on them and see how they're doing? Absolutely. But they're not the ones I'm hanging out with regularly. They're not the ones who I'm always leaning on to hang out with.
Yeah, and something else that we do and we have things to look forward to. It could be a weekend trip away to Vegas. It could be a international trip, like diving into the Amazon. We can have activities, right? We're going to see the Wizard of Oz at the Sphere when we go to Vegas, and like things like that I'm super excited about. And it gives us something to look forward to, something that has nothing to do with work. And I think that's so important. I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below. And as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.